Hi, today I'm just going to go in order of my screen here, but this will not necessarily be the order of the presentations today. We have Kevin Hartley, and he is Water Conservation Specialist for the City of Greeley. He's going to talk about auditing and all the things that, all the programs that he has available for you. Then next on my screen is Don Ireland. He is a conservation extraordinaire. He is an ordinary citizen that took his HOA and created habitat, did plumbing retrofits, landscape retrofits. He's got a picture of one of the landscape retrofits behind him. He's going to talk about how he made this happen, because it is possible for an individual or a board to make some of these projects happen, and he's going to make it more practical for you. And then next is Terry Farrell. He's actually going to be going first. He is our non-potable engineer, and one of the things Greeley is really working on, well, the two things that Greeley's really working on making bigger and better is expanding our non-potable system, which is irrigation water, so we're not putting drinking water on lawns. And so he will be talking about what he has available for that. And you can see his adorable cat up there in the background. And then next is Chad, and Chad is probably not going to be presenting, but he is here, and he is from Northern Water. So we have 3 people that are on the webinar today from Northern Water, and they're going to talk about what they have available for incentives for getting more efficient. And because Greeley is a shareholder in the Colorado Big Thompson project, that's why Greeley can participate in these programs. All right, so Terry, if you want to go ahead and share your first slide. Oh, Frank, I didn't talk about you, did I? Frank Kinder is going to be the one presenting, and he will talk about all of these their grant programs that are going to be available. Sorry, Frank, I almost forgot because you didn't have your face up. Okay, Terry, go ahead and share your first slide.
Okay, like Ruth said, I'm Terry Farrell. I'm the Water Resources Engineer for non-potable systems. Greeley has done a fantastic job and is a leader in the state as far as non-potable irrigation systems. We have a tremendous portfolio of water, and what makes our non-pot system so unique is this is water that cannot be treated by Greeley. So we have a lot of portfolio of water, irrigation water, that cannot go through the treatment plant, but we're putting it to use by offering it as irrigation water. Very clean water quality. The map you see on the Cache-La-Poudre waterway system map shows a lot of diversions along the Poudre. There's a lot of people using it, a lot of irrigation companies using it. Fortunately, Greeley has a large share of irrigation water to use. One point I do want to make is that every drop of water in Colorado is owned by somebody, be it rain, water, snow, doesn't matter, groundwater. It's all owned by somebody, which makes Colorado unique in its water, and it is a finite supply. This map, and these maps will be available through Ruth, shows a lot of the irrigation ditches and lateral systems that run through Greeley. They're fairly extensive. There are literally hundreds of laterals that are privately owned that irrigate people's yards from the early 1900s. Right now, our non-pot system draws primarily on the Greeley No. 3 ditch and the Greeley Loveland irrigation canal. The city owns and operates about 30 pump stations that are all non-potable. We serve areas, if you go to the map on the Greeley website, Landfax, and call up the non-potable utilities, you can see the non-pot system in purple. It will show the pipes as well on a lot of it. But these are the pump stations and the areas that we currently serve, but we're ever expanding. We're looking right now at literally hundreds of acres of new development that will be serving non-potable, preserving our potable water for better use. again, the water quality that Greeley has for irrigation is tremendous. Denver, when they started their reuse program, actually killed trees because of the salt content. So we are fortunate in a number of ways. And the biggest incentive for non-potable is the price. It's about 70% of potable water, and there's no monthly fee during the winter when it's not being used. So there is a big incentive for getting on this, and we're seeing more and more HOAs, commercial areas, requesting to get on the non-pot system. I do want to say that typically in the conversion, you will have to replace the sprinkler heads and may require filters. Kevin will probably speak a little more to this in his presentation, but you have to keep that in mind that there is some upfront cost to making these changes. And Ruth will provide a list of resources as well, but the Greeley website really has a lot of resources. It has information on the non-pot system, the maps, everything you need to initially get started.
I'm Hartley. Hold up a sec. Water conservation specialist for the city of Greeley. And I'm just here to talk about the indoor and irrigation audits that are available for all city of Greeley water customers, and it's a free service. Can you go to the next one, please? There we are.
Hey, Kevin.
So, like I said, all audits are free of charge to all of our customers, whether it be indoor, outdoor, residential, commercial, or industrial. Next one, please. So in the indoor audits, what we're primarily looking for is leaks. We also do the shower head exchange, where we will measure your shower heads, and if they're a greater amount than the ones that we have, which are very efficient, we can swap those out and do it for you for free. Got a couple different ones to choose from. We're also looking at ways to get as efficient as you can on the inside, and there are some rebates available towards that end. Next one, please. We start in the basement, typically where your hot water heater is. We want to start where the water comes into the building, and then we follow it all the way back out again. And we'll always start with the hot water heater, because that's usually right where the water main is. We just want to check the age of the unit itself, and we're also going to inspect the pipes to see if there's any issues with them. Next, please.
Okay, there's a little bit of a delay. I don't know what's going on.
Awesome technology. Okay, so after the water heater, I always like to start with the bathrooms, and we'll start by putting dye tabs in the tanks of all your toilets. And we just ask that you wait 15-20 minutes and then check the bowl. If you got blue in the bowl, you know the toilet's leaking. And of course, you know, after you flush it, it will be blue. So this is just beforehand. Next, please. Next, we'll measure the flow of your aerators and your shower heads. And this, again, is where we start doing the shower head exchange. What we're looking for is just how many gallons per minute are we expending. And we do have efficient shower heads and aerators that we can install. Again, it's totally free, and I'll do it all in there. Next, please. And kind of I beat myself to the punch, but you know, you can see it kind of before and after. The shower heads that we have are 1.5 gallons per minute. Typically what I see out is, even in the newer buildings, is usually 2.5 gallons a minute. So there's savings to be had there, not just in water, but with shower heads, especially hot water. as you know, you're not using as much hot water, so you know you're saving on your gas bill as well. Next, please. At the very end, I like to do what I call the potty talk, and we just kind of go through available technologies, typically in the toilets, for ultra low flow toilets, available rebates, especially for the toilets. We're also looking at washers and dryers and ways we can save there. And I, you know, answer any questions that any, you know, the customer may have at that point, and just kind of round it up, and then I'm out of your hair. It's a nice, painless expedition. Next, please. All right, irrigation audits. This one's a little different. Again, you know, I'm going to start out. We're looking for leaks. We're testing for efficiency. We're looking for ways to get more efficient with the system. While I'm there, I'm going to measure, and I can create a custom watering schedule that I can program into your controller while I'm there. We'll talk about, you know, what I see as ways to improve the system and get it more efficient. There are rebates tied to my recommendations, and we also provide a free smart controller install if you go ahead and follow my recommendations. Next, please. So when I get there, you know, I'm going to say hello, and then I'm going to usually end up in your garage. Because of the COVID issues right now, I'm not allowed to go indoors. So I wouldn't be able to audit the place, say, that has a controller in the basement at this point. So it'd have to be either outside or in a garage. That's about all I can do. But when I start, I'm going to record how you're watering, and then I'm going to walk through the entire system zone by zone. Okay, next. Once I've completed the walkthrough, I'm going to measure some select zones. And what I'm looking for is what the precipitation rate is and what the distribution uniformity is. And I can use those numbers to create that custom schedule I was speaking of. And at that point, I can program your controller for it and show you, if you have any questions about the controller, on its usage and how to program it and how to use it. Next, please. After that is when we sit and we talk, or stand and talk, about what I found on the audit and the areas of the, you know, what I would recommend to increase the efficiency of the system, any technologies I might recommend, or any other problems that I found. Next, please. Afterwards, I can either email this to you or by mail, or both, whatever you prefer. I'll send you the full report with the recommendations. Everything that we'll discuss will be in the report itself, including product information pertaining to what I might have recommended. The rebates available do not require you to buy the specific product I recommend, so long as it's the same technologies. And if you do decide to go ahead with my recommendations, then we can get you a free smart controller, and I'll come out, remeasure, create a new schedule, because it will be different. And at that point, I'll install and program the smart controller and show you how to use it. And that, again, is completely for free. So I think that's the end of my slides. I'm not sure. Yep.
Okay. So what I wanted to talk to you about is the conservation program has money to replace turf. So ideally, if you are going to participate in the non-potable, and Terry, you're going to have to just talk with him to find out if property, because we want to do this where we've already got infrastructure in place. But if you're going to be doing non-potable, we would also like you to participate in some turf removal. a lot of this grass, it is only getting mowed on, walked on when it gets mowed. So maybe it makes a little more sense to remove it. Or maybe you live in an older HOA and the landscape is just aged. You know, if it was up in the 70s or 80s, you've got a lot of junipers. You've got that kind of old-fashioned look. If you want just an update, or maybe you want to improve the curb appeal so that you can improve rentals, and that also improve making sure that, or purchases, and making sure that the property looks really good so that people are willing to pay top dollar for it. That's another way we could do this. So the rebate that we have, and it's going to be similar to what we're doing for homeowners. It's we're calling it Life After Lawn, and it's $1 per square foot. So you remove the turf, have a landscape plan, get it installed. We're ideally hoping to get these done within one season. So if you started in spring, by the end of the season, but we can phase some of these larger projects. So Don's going to talk to you about how he took off little bite-sized pieces and has worked on this a little bit each year. And we're perfectly willing to do that. The money for this is not going to go away, so it doesn't have to be all done in 1 year. But we can do these smaller, smaller areas and, get a feel for it and then branch out. We like to do pilot projects and make our mistakes on a small scale, and it'd be the same thing for you. Get a feel for it and then move on to a bigger project. So that is removing turf, replacing it with Xeriscape. Now, that does not mean removing turf and replacing it with rock. You can see in this picture, there's some big boulders and there's some pathways that are rock. That's perfectly fine. This happened to actually be a rain garden, so there's bigger boulders, river rock in here to help carry the rain. That's perfectly fine. We just don't want a sea of rock. So it has to be a balanced, nice looking landscape that you're going to be proud of. So if you have areas where you just need to improve curb appeal, or maybe the fronts of your lots, or in between condos or patio homes, we do have a smaller grant program where you wouldn't necessarily have to be removing turf, but you could just be improving or maybe adding some habitat for pollinators. And that's a smaller amount of money, so it's limited. We could probably only do 1 or 2 of those a year, but we also have that money. And then the next slide is just Ken's email. And I neglected to mention to you that we will put all of these PowerPoints on the webpage so that you could download them and look at them again. Terry's pictures of those maps, they're really fun to look at, not so much fun to look at on a computer screen. So you'll be able to print those out and look at them and see where you are relative to some of that infrastructure we have in place.
Hi, everybody. I'm Don Ireland. Glad to be with you folks up in Greeley. I'm a little further to the south in the southeast corner of Denver, and want to tell you a little bit about what we've done here. I got into my HOA and moved here when I got married and didn't know the first thing about water. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a horticulturalist. I'm not a scientist, but over the years, I became a little bit of a water geek. And I got into my HOA board, and we've done some pretty amazing things together as a board united and supportive of the idea of water conservation. And let me tell you, as Ruth said, talk about doing projects. You can do it if you have a small HOA and maybe all at once, or if not, if you've got a larger one like we do, it may take you several years. My motto has always been, by the yard, it's hard, but by the inch, it's a cinch. So, develop an overall plan and, figure out a way to work it, because the one great thing is this does work, this will work. You can save a lot of money and improve the property values of your neighborhood. I was reading over the weekend how to improve your property values. The number one thing recommended by real estate professionals, improve your landscaping and add more trees, because they have so many eco services that people are interested in. So let me run through the slides here, and feel free to text any or chat any questions of what we're doing. And let's see, how do I get my screen to advance here? This I am trying to figure out. There we go. Where am I? I'm in Southeast Denver. If you've ever been to the Tech Center, Cherry Creek State Park and Reservoir, and Interstate 225, well, you're right next to me. We've got 225 condominiums, townhouse style. We're actually one of the 3 oldest, along with our neighbors in the city of Denver. We opened to the public in 1966. And our HOA, maybe yours is this way. The HOA gets one water pipe into the complex. It's split off to all the individual homes, and there are no meters. So the HOA pays for all the water. When they pay for the water, they pay for the sewage. You'll also recognize this if you're driving down along I-225. We have a mural that says, "Welcome to Denver," and embedded in that are pictures of Peyton Manning and John Elway. And in front of it is this is an old picture, 2 years old when we did it, of water-wise landscaping. No rocks, no cactus. We don't want to look like Tucson, Arizona. We're Denver. If you live in an HOA, well, you're one of my neighbors in the Communities Association Institute. There's 9,800 of them here in Colorado, and so about 38% of the state lives in some form of HOA. And if your HOA is paying for some of the water, whether it's individual homes or just the lawns, it's costing you money in forms of your monthly HOA maintenance dues thing. And you have to ask, do you want to save money? The obvious answer is yes. And does COVID-19 impact us? Yeah, we've our water bill has gone up because we've all been locked in our homes here as well as around most of the other states since March. So water bills will go up, but that's okay. We'll get through it, and COVID-19. So you want to talk to your HOA boards and about saving money, but also about other good things that changing your landscaping will do. Talk to people's hearts. If we don't preserve the pollinators, who will? And pollinators make about 80% of the food that we consume. Even if you're raising cattle, you've got to have some sort of grazing material for them to sustain themselves. So we've got to do things to help preserve our pollinators. You're in an HOA, you're probably like me. We deal with 3 Ps: swimming pools, parking, and dog poop. Am I allowed to say poop on the air? Oh, well, never mind. And we have to understand that many people who've moved to Colorado are coming from places like Virginia and Pennsylvania, like I did, or Maine, where it rains all the time, and they're used to Kentucky bluegrass. Well, it doesn't grow naturally here. It takes a lot of time and a lot of money to mow it, fertilize it, aerate it, and sustain it. So we need to start thinking as fellow Coloradans about what we want in Colorado, which is Colorado-style landscaping. And it's important for us to use this thought. If you don't walk on it or play on it, you probably don't need it in bluegrass. It's probably time for us to start thinking a little bit more about kissing your grass goodbye. Where were we as an HOA at Cherry Creek 3? Well, we used to use 42% of our budget to pay for 35.89 million gallons of water. Now we're down to 20 million gallons of water. We're using 15 million fewer gallons a year by being more water-wise, more conservation and efficiency minded. So we've saved hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars by saving 100 million gallons of water over the past 10 years. If you don't do anything, well, you can keep raising your HOA fees. But if you want to do something smart for your community and for the residents, encourage indoor consumption reduction by offering rebates or encouraging people to change their toilets. Wow, when we started, I wish I would have what Greeley is offering today with the toilets projects and switching out shower heads and aerators and sprinkler irrigation audits. So it is great. And there's a lot of resources. Greeley Water is probably a great help. Northern Water, just lots of places that are out there willing to help you, so you don't have to be a genius and go it alone by yourself. When we started, we broke our 250 homes up into 5 phases. So we did 50 little gardens that are in front of each home. I'll show you them in a minute. We replaced more than 1,500 rotary or old style sprinkler heads with MP rotary heads in front of the units. Our landscaper guys were nice, but they didn't care how much water we spent. So we took control of our timing and make sure our clocks were set right and recommended by Denver Water. And oh yeah, we also incentivized our individual owners, since we were paying for the water, to change their toilets, and we got more than 425 people toilets changed in our neighborhood, which greatly reduced our consumption. By the way, this is what our landscaping used to look like about 15 years ago. It was lava rock and dying old junipers, which was the fashion of the day. The developers, when they built the place, grass was cheap, water was cheap, junipers looked nice when they were young, but plants had limited lifetimes. So we started making the changes to what was before to what we have today. We used to have those old poodle juniper bushes, and I used to call them, I still call them, refer to them as the god-awful ugly juniper. Now we're taking people on garden tours. That's how our landscaping has changed so much. One of the things we do, we remind our residents through our newsletters and our website that water impacts their wallets. And as an HOA, in addition to what our local water provider offers, we also offer HOA efficiency rewards for new toilets, new energy efficient dishwashers, front loading laundry machines, washing machines, etc. And so we do things to make people constantly aware. We no longer look like this or this. We started changing things. We got rid of the old, brought in the new, and it's growing and colorful throughout the year. We took areas of our lawns that we weren't going to use, and this is maybe of particular interest to anybody from a church who's listening in today. We took unused lawn area and turned it into a community garden where people in our neighborhood, if they want a plot, they can have one, and they grow their own lettuce and various veggies. And I see a lot of churches around the area doing the same thing. Most churches have a mission to feed the needy and help those who are maybe going through tough times. So a lot of churches are getting their gardeners and taking grass area at their churches and building community gardens that they're raising produce that they're donating to the local food banks. Just some food for thought. When we had water repairs and sewer repairs, we took out sod, and instead of replacing it with sod, we went with more water-wise landscaping, and it looks a whole lot better. We don't have to mow it every single week. We took this really ugly patch of grass, and junipers had just been cut down in that brown area, and we switched it into local Xeriscape plants recommended to us from Audubon Rockies and Plant Select. You guys have a great resource on your Greeley Water webpage. So we went from this to this. It took a couple years, but everyone's happy with this, and we got a lot of people who walk by daily to see what's going on. We no longer look like the outside of the Munster or the Addams family house. Instead, we have a nice variety of colorful plants that are blooming throughout the spring and early summers. So in summary, we kind of took a big water bill, cut it down a lot, and we're still paying less for water and sewage today than what we did a dozen years ago. So if we can do it, you can do it too. This graph shows how our water consumption has gone down over the years. You know, some years a little bit more, some years a little bit less. So, but it saves us money, and we've got a much better looking neighborhood. So in summary, we asked people to change their toilets. We gave them some money to help them do it. We changed out our outside landscaping. By the way, we have 347,000 square feet of irrigated space. We took over our irrigation clocks and taught our landscapers, hey, it's our water. We want you to use it wisely. We replaced sprinkler heads. We replaced our irrigation controller, and we started offering our residents cash efficiency rewards for changing their water devices. And the big thing is communicate, communicate, communicate with all the residents in your neighborhood. Because we're facing not a dire future, but a difficult future in the state. Our water plan for the state says that up to 1.3 million people could be a little short on water by the year 2050, which is only 30 years away. Michigan State University and the National Science Foundation says within the next few years, about a third or more of the households across the country are not going to be able to afford their water bills. But the good note is when people learn and think about water that they're using, they tend to reduce it by about 8%. A couple of friends of mine, beside all the friends I have there at Greeley Water and Northern Water, Plant Select has a beautiful website. They're offering show you different plants that you could plant in different settings, whether your house is facing east, west, whatever. And Resource Central, you've probably heard of them out of Boulder. They offer the garden in a box planting kits, and you can get a discount on them because of where you live. And Audubon Rockies has a lot of resources about low water gardening, and they're planting the right things to help preserve our birds, bees, hummingbirds, and other pollinators, the butterflies. We're rich with butterflies this year too in the neighborhood. And our neighborhood started out to save money on our water budget and our sewage budget, but we ended up catching some attention from the state and Colorado Waterwise and Plant Select and Audubon. So we didn't try to go win awards. We tried to save water and do the right thing. And but we were surprised when we did get some nice things. Why do I do it? Why am I this little geeky water guy who could be doing other things like watching Netflix? Oh, we've done that all too much in COVID-19. These are my two youngest grandchildren on the left, Mason and Julie. Yet I want to make sure I'm doing things so they have good, fresh, drinkable water as they grow up here in Colorado. And I'm happy to talk to people. Lately, it's been through these Zoom conferences. I've even talked to HOAs, and this is a cave over in near Red Rocks Park in Denver. So I'm happy to talk to people, and Ruth has a bunch of the materials that I've been presenting to show you. So they're available for the asking there. So
my name is Frank Kinder. I'm the Water Efficiency Manager for Northern Water. And I'm going to share with you today who we are, what we're doing, and how you can participate in some of our services that complement those that you've just seen from your prior presenters. So let's move forward to our next slide. And Northern Water has been around for a long time. We are a provider of water to the region. So you may have heard about us. We're located in Berthoud, but we serve the entire community from Fort Collins down to Boulder, and it's about 1.5 million acres, 1 million people, and 640,000 acres of irrigated farmland, 33 cities, and 129 rural domestic water districts. So recently, in the last 2 years, we have transitioned from our plans that you might have had a visit on our campus or been part of our fair or participated in some training, but we've expanded into services that are assisting the allottees, the folks who use the water we deliver directly. So in support of folks like Kevin and Ruth, we're out to the other cities that don't have as many professionals as Greeley and offering some similar support. So at our campus, we do have a landscape demonstration display. We have a plaza here, which is on your left, and you could see different landscape models here. We also have a plant select garden, as well as a variety of other plant styles and types. And we will be changing some of these demonstrations over time. Our campus is growing a little bit, and so I encourage you to come visit. And right now is a special time. We have a Perry's agave, which is doing its once in a lifetime bloom. It has around a 20+ foot stalk, and it's just beginning to show the flowers, which will help it reproduce. So a lot to see in our garden. It's a great little walk around. If you have a chance to stop in, it's right behind our headquarters. The other thing we do is industry training in support of folks like Ruth and city employees, green industry landscapers, and HOAs like Dawn. is we provide training for irrigation efficiency, for water use planning, for auditing, a variety of skills to help us be as efficient as we can with the water we're using and to create these landscapes that are resilient and beautiful and add property value, but also are appropriate for Colorado's intense climate. And then thirdly, we are doing some audits now in support of helping folks understand how much water they're using and what they can do to improve it if they are overusing or they don't have an efficient system. So we are partnering with Resource Central, as you heard a little bit about. They have a program called Slow to Flow, where they will come out and do an irrigation audit of single family homes or HOAs. And to sign up for this service, you would go to their website and you would utilize a form to request an audit. And if it's possible that your existing city serves you through Resource Central, you can do so through their contract. If not, Northern Water provides that service on other cities' behalf. So luckily you have excellent professionals with the city of Greeley who can do those audits, and then those audits can serve as direction for making landscape changes or other investments. In support of those two examples, we do consultations. So on the center there is Chad Cannell, one of our team members. You saw him earlier. He's a horticulturalist. We also have Lindsay Lucia, Ali Mazarek, and Mary Hattendorf. They make up our team. And the consultations serve as an official but objective third-party review of your landscape to see what issues might offer opportunities for changing, whether it's an inefficient irrigation system or it's an older model landscape like Don provided. And the consultations serve as support for our project grants, which are on the left. The grants are designed to be a partnership with you, and they are available for HOAs, private sector businesses, municipalities, nonprofits, anyone who has a commercial landscape that would like to do an upgrade where you would be reducing your water use and serving as an educational exhibit can apply for a grant. This year, the grants are $15,000 with the 50% matching required. So you're going to do a $30,000 or more project, and we will help you match that with the first 15. The grants do require the consultation and an audit, and then they are competitive. This year we had around 30 applications, and we were able to select around 15. So the grants are designed to be accomplished in one season, if possible, and they need to be in a location that's publicly accessible and that can serve as kind of a demonstration site where people can walk on and take a tour and look around at what you've got. And then we will be offering signage in support of those grants. Grants have ranged anywhere from changing out irrigation controllers and nozzles and not changing any physical landscape to transitioning from high water use Kentucky bluegrass to a native turf species, to moving grass away and installing instead a water-wise planting bed. We even have some new construction grants underway where we're providing demonstrations of different landscape models. And the idea here is to provide regional examples that serve as inspiration for HOAs for existing and new construction to undertake water-efficient landscapes that meet multiple objectives. Looks like I got somebody at my door. So I wanted to also then highlight the fact that we have a conservation campus effort underway. And that means we are renovating our landscape to mimic the same things we're talking about when we're doing consultations, audits, and grants. And so that has led to a number of steps, including changing our irrigation controller and changing our landscape. We did an irrigation audit. So we wanted to walk the talk that we're having in those same conversations with you. So just a quick background on the grant. It started in 2018, and it was our first year to kind of figure it out as we go. And we have cities from Fort Collins to Longmont to Loveland, Boulder, Greeley, Berthoud, a variety of regional locations. This year we have more underway in Evans and Windsor, just a whole variety of landscape opportunities. So we are looking to include folks from Greeley, and we would love to work with you. The next phase of funding for the grants will be 2021. So you can sign up for a consultation from our team later on this year. Those are beginning around July 20th. They're around 90 minutes max, and it's a walk around of your property in order to get a consultation, we do request that you fill out a consultation form to give us an idea of the landscape you have, what measures you've done, and what you're looking to achieve. And these grants are a lot of fun in that it gives you a partner in how you can make these changes. So as an example, we are proposing that the next year's grants can be increased up to $20,000 per, so a $40,000 grant. Here's an example of one that would be 38. It's important to note that we are responsible with the funds, so we are careful to ensure that the prices for plant material are retail value or less, that the labor rates are in line with regional practices, and that there are appropriate costs included in a proposal. A grant includes an application with pictures, with descriptions, with a required 5-year maintenance plan, as well as an approval from the HOA board and residents. So you have to demonstrate that the HOA community is on board with the change if you would like to be accepted into one of our grant programs. Since we have a variety of communities we serve, public facilities and open spaces are eligible, as well as businesses, schools, multifamily, and HOA. So you are able to talk with us about an opportunity, or if you know someone who has a project. The only requirement is that projects underway are not eligible. These have to be in concept or can be co-developed, but something that has been planned and approved already is not going to be funded by us. And we do serve 9 counties all the way out to the eastern border. So if you are in Sterling or Ovid or Eads, those are opportunities for us to partner with you too. We have not done a lot of work out on the eastern portion of our service territory, but would love to do so. So I kind of mentioned the variety of landscapes that are eligible for these, and a lot of them are in line with what Don provides. Many people have been in a community for 20, 30 years. They are realizing that the amount of turf they have is not productive for use. It might just be an aesthetic, and that the cost of maintaining it in both personnel, water, and chemicals is something they would not like to continue. They might also realize that there's a new aesthetic in the community, such as sustainability, where they would like to provide more with the money they're spending and move away from things that are single resources to something that's a little more environmentally sensitive, that can provide ecosystem services such as habitat and supportive pollinators. So those are the kind of things that really are attractive to us. If you are looking to undertake a program like this, I would suggest considering the Habitat Hero program from Audubon of the Rockies, or the Certified Wildlife Habitat from the National Wildlife Federation. Any of those programs give you a nice guideline by which to start changing your landscape. And if you do a change in your changing your landscape controller, we would require that it be a WaterSense labeled model to take advantage of the technology to do ET controls. You don't want to be watering in the rain or right after it, because that's pretty silly. Let's see. So these are the components to our grants. If you have a change away from turf, we would not be providing support for putting in concrete. It has to be permeable. We're looking to have projects that can include low impact development, but they cannot be things that are going to just eliminate a landscape or reduce the value of the outdoor space. So we also would like to see the use of native plants or plant select materials. They need to be low water or very low, or maximum should be medium water use. That's not something we want to do, is replace a high water use turf with a high water use plant. And it's important to note that at the maturity of the plant, it has to be a 50% coverage of the landscape. So what I mean by that is you can't remove half an acre of turf and just put in 10 plants. It needs to be an appropriate amount of landscape coverage so that the landscape still provides the compliance with the ordinance of the city that you're served in, and still provides benefits to the users. Along with that, I wanted to reemphasize that any project being undertaken in a city must also receive a land use review from the city that serves it, so that it is in compliance with the original landscape plat. What that means is that you might have to receive a minor amendment to the original plan that reflects the changes you're looking to undertake. And so different cities do that in different ways. Some of those cities require a landscape architect to author and stamp the plan. Some do not, but you'll definitely want to run your plan by the appropriate authorities and demonstrate its approval in the process for our grant too. And we would want to ensure that you're using the best landscape management practices using mulch, whether it be wood or a natural material such as pea gravel, and that you're also tuning the irrigation system to the new landscape design. You don't want to put down the same amount of water after you've done all that work. So here's a couple of examples from our first year in 2019. This is an HOA in Loveland at the top here that had a number of these mid-community parking circles that were all turf. It was quite difficult to efficiently water this turf. It wasn't used for any particular purpose, and it didn't make a lot of sense. So they removed these circles of turf, and in their place, they put in amenities, things like sitting benches. They did a variety of flowering plants and then mulch, and they cleverly reused that turf as some of the landscape design. So to the left of that bench there's actually a hill where they planted some ground cover, and a drip system was installed. And then they were able to add some height and variation to the landscape with also reducing their disposal costs. So pretty clever reuse here. One of the first things they noted at this project was that it received more attention from birds and bees. They did literally see more wildlife at these locations than in the past. So including these ecosystem services is a benefit for all the users while reducing that water demand. Down below is a property in Fort Collins where they moved 1.4 acres from a drainage basin, a detention basin that was a Kentucky bluegrass, and that's being transitioned to a cool season turf. That will reduce a fair amount of water demand. It will also increase the biodiversity of the landscape area, and it'll still serve as that detention basin. So you've kept your engineering function for stormwater while creating a more habitat for some of the species that are there. And it's actually going to cost less for them to run too, because you're not going to mow it, you're not going to irrigate it, not going to need to use chemicals. So for 2020, this is the timeline to complete the steps to participate in our grant. You would begin by asking for a consultation, which we would schedule with you. And then once that was done, you would also receive an irrigation audit. We would be happy to take a look at the audits from the city of Greeley as a component of your application. If you're outside Greeley, that would be done through Resource Central. And then we deliberate and select our grants and then notify you. And then if you're able to proceed, we would complete a contract with you. And you can begin on March 31st of next year with required completion by September 1st. It's important to note too that we pay you at the end of the project, not up front. And we require a checklist to be completed with a final walkthrough to ensure the project met its original intent. Finally, if you'd like reference materials, these are on our website. This is an overview of the grant program, and then you'll also be able to see an application. It will be coming soon, but right now this can give you a reference for preparing for the steps that we've just discussed. This year, we're looking to roll out an online application form where you would upload your materials. So not something you would look to print out per se, unless you have a limitation for access to that form. So we would love to talk with you, and I hope you're inspired by our projects. We have some great grant projects underway this year, and hopefully we'll be able to show you those in the future when we roll out a lessons learned document showcasing what our customers are doing to change their water use. That's all I have for you. So here's my contact information. I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody who has additional interest or questions.
All right, so those are some of the different projects you could take advantage of. I might mention also, Frank alerted me to this, our program, I don't know if I said it, but the rebate program, you would also do the install and get the money at the end of the project. So, and we are asking for people to kind of keep track of the money, like receipt wise, so we can, for future projects, be able to give people, well, if you do this kind of a project, it's going to cost blanks dollars per square foot. If you do just a turf replacement with a native turf, it's going to be this percent or this dollar amount per square foot. So we can give people a better idea of what they're looking at moving forward. And I realize a commercial program is going to look completely different than a homeowner program, but it would give you an idea. The other thing I wanted to mention is, I don't know if anybody's noticed what's going on at Bittersweet. We only have one question in the question box, so feel free to type in a question and we'll read them aloud and get them answered. What's going on at Bittersweet is we're removing a lot of that turf that was just around the pond and was never getting walked on. We're removing the bluegrass and putting different samples of native turfs. Cool season, warm season, mostly warm season because that's what we have a lot of. And they will be mowed and maintained at some different heights. So it'll maybe shorter next to the sidewalk, but a lot of the parts will not be mowed at all. And that is to increase some of this diversity in our parks. And as we encroach more and more into wildlife territory and places where they've been habitating, we need to provide places for some of that habitat, those animals to live in town too. And it, you know, it's a good lesson for you, your grandkids, your children. And you can really make it nice. So,
add something in?
Sure.
We have seen such a great change in our biodiversity. This year, the butterflies are bountiful. Spring and fall, as they migrate, the hummingbirds. I had never seen a hummingbird here in our neighborhood prior to us making these changes. So it's great. And when you see native bees, and believe me, 99% of all bees won't sting you. But to see that great diversity, and for the little children to be learning either through our community gardens or just walking around observing all the different colors and textures and fragrances of plants, and to see all the pollinators, it's just a wonderful, wonderful thing. And since we're all living in Colorado, the other thing to note is our state legislature and the governor in the past 15 years have changed several laws. At one time, it really wasn't considered cool for an HOA to change its landscape or residents to go to a more water-wise way of being in their yards. But now the state laws not only endorse it, they support the concept of it. So even at the state level, everyone's realizing we only have so much water to go around. Let's make the best of it. Let's do the most appropriate good things with it.
And I'm glad you brought that up, Don, because I was thinking about that earlier. One of the first things I hear from people when I'm talking about Xeriscape or natives or any of this is, my HOA won't allow it. Well, not only is that not true, an HOA cannot tell you that. They can't tell you you have to put turf in that little 2-foot strip between the sidewalk and the street. They can't tell you that you have to water your bluegrass lawn in the middle of a drought. If you want those specific numbers of those bills, I can get that to you. And then last year they added to it and said, not only can you not outlaw Xeriscape and not outlaw natives and not outlaw a no lawn front yard, but you now need to start encouraging it in these common space areas, you know, the areas that you share with the neighbors, or the green spaces around your property. And so just keep that in mind too. We need to start encouraging that. And the other thing about the bluegrass lawn is it's a monoculture, and look what's going to happen to our ash trees. You know, 25 years ago, everybody put in an ash tree, which was a great tree at the time, but we're going to lose a lot of them. And it doesn't make sense to replace 15 ash trees in an HOA or on a larger property with 15 of the same trees. You know, add some diversity, do 15 different species, or at least 5 different species. That way, if one gets a disease, the whole lot isn't wiped out. I also wanted to mention that we do have a plant database on our website. It's plantsforgreeley.com. It's another good resource for looking at plants in addition to Plant Select. And, you know, if once we get out of these restrictions of being able to be around people, maybe we could even organize a tour and all of us go up and check out Northern's garden and maybe get a little tour. I mean, we could still do it if we social distance, but if anyone's interested in that, let us know and we'll try to make that happen. It may not be this summer, but we'll try to make it happen. So I do have only this one question, and Jen, I'm just going to go ahead and read it. Why are there so many water districts in our region? And I realized we probably should have started out with a little bit about Greeley's Water. So Greeley Water was established back at the turn of the last century, actually before that. And we actually built a plant up at Bellevue and finished that project in 1907. And that was kind of, we had a plant here in Greeley at Island Grove, but it was just a slow sand filter plant. And it was really limited to the seasons when we had water in the pooter. Normally, you'd have water in the pooter for spring and summer, and then fall and winter, it was pretty much dry. And so Greeley went above and went to Bellevue and built their plant, and then piped it 36 miles to Greeley. And so that was Greeley's legacy. Fort Collins has somewhat similar, but as places were settled, they kind of took responsibility for their own resources, their water, bringing water for their crops, which is what our water originally came here. And so Greeley's relationship with Northern is they manage the Colorado Big Thompson project, of which Greeley is a shareholder. So that's why we try to work cooperatively with them. They do this with not just Greeley, they do it with Fort Collins, like Frank said, Boulder, Loveland, Longmont, and then all the way out to the Eastern Plains. And so I guess that's kind of the answer, but basically each community had their own water. And I know it's different in other states, but Colorado has this prior appropriation document, and that's the way we managed, I'm talking like I'm one of those ancestors. That's the way it's been managed. And yeah, that's why there's different. And then there's water districts that treat and deliver water to citizens. And then there's also conservancy districts that just deliver raw water for irrigation and of which Greeley is also shareholders in several of those. And they may just handle like Central Colorado Water Conservancy District. They only do irrigation water, ag irrigation water. So everybody just kind of has their little niche, and that's why we have so many different ones. No more questions. That was it, I guess. All right. Does anybody want to, Jen, do you want to put up that last slide? And if anybody wants to have any parting comments, we really appreciate you being here and sitting through this. And we will get these PowerPoints posted on the website. We also did record this, so if you wanted to watch it again, I know there were some audio issues, or if you just didn't absorb it all, or you had to run out of the room to answer the doorbell or whatever, we will get that posted. We could probably get the PowerPoints up pretty fast and some of the links.
Do we need design assistance for people if they have a need for someone to help them understand what options they'll be able to implement for a landscape change? Do you provide that service in any way?
What we would do is we would go out and do kind of like you do with your consultations and walk their property and try and, in fact, I know I have one woman at least on the call that's exactly what I did last week, and Kevin's helping her to amend the drip system. And so we're not going to draw it up, but we do provide that.
Okay.
Just, yeah. I mean, I would love to get to that point where maybe we could share someone that could help with the design piece of it. That'd be great.
Well, we're working on that. We would love to talk with you a little more about what that could look like in the long term. We certainly want to reflect on the expertise in the industry and not take away from the availability for those contracts. One of the things we also do is endorse the providers who have been trained and taken water sense designation. So we have a new document we created called Landscape Renovation Resources, where if people are looking for a trained irrigation specialist to help with their redesign of their irrigation system, or a landscape architect or other types of contractors to do the work, that document helps provide access to the entities that represent those groups, such as the Association for Landscape Contractors of Colorado, the Irrigation Association, and others. So I would be happy to have that available to the attendees. And the last thing is, as supporters of folks like Greeley and the other small cities that are around Greeley, we are looking to offer an indoor commercial water auditing service in the future for things like homes that, or not homes, I'm sorry, large water users like hotels or office buildings or manufacturers. So we would like to roll that out in the future in case that's of interest to folks in their professional environment.
And that's a good point. Any of these things, if you think of something like that, we're open to talking to you about them. And like I said, Greeley and Northern work together a lot. You know, if we can partner on stuff, we will, and try and make that happen for people. All right, well, anybody else? Terry, did you want to add any parting comments, or Dawn?
Well, Ruth, I would say the folks who live in the Northern Water Territory, and especially in Greeley Water, what a great group of resources you folks have. I was kind of like Moses wandering through the wilderness back in the prior to 2010, trying to find resources and help and everything. It's just wonderful and almost magical, all the things you have available. You've done the homework for folks, and it's a much simpler process now when they get a hold of you. So boy, I wish I would have been in Greeley when I was starting this journey for our HOA back a dozen or so years ago. So thanks to all of you who are trying to help everybody out there, especially those of you living in HOAs.
And Terry?
No, I think it's pretty well covered. Again, Greeley's a leader in the state for irrigation at this level. I'd encourage all to switch over if at all possible.
All right. I do have one last question, and then I'm going to get you out of here before 1:15, because had it in my brain we were going to go no longer than an hour and 15 minutes. Cindy asks, just to clarify, will we be able to get a consultation after July 20th? That is for Northern's program. So if you wanted to be involved in their program, yes. For Greeley's program, me meeting with you the other day would probably suffice with that, except for I may have Kevin come out and take a look at your system too, if he can squeeze it in. He had to condense a whole season of irrigation audits into about 3 months, so. But we could talk offline about that. And and Kevin lost his mic on his phone, so. If there's nothing else anybody wants to say, Jen, did you want to say anything last minute? I'm sorry, I read your 2 questions.
No, all good. Thank you guys so much for joining us for Conservation Incentives. Really appreciate it. And shout out to all of our wonderful guests, Ruth, Kevin, Frank, Dawn, and Terry. Really appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.